All right, hello everyone, and welcome back. My name is Magduit, and we're here again with another rack. Today we're going to be going over my Mag Deep Sub, and it's basically just a sub rack that has some pretty cool presets, and it sort of just really hammers home the idea of deep sub basses and how you can use things like certain harmonics to create very familiar and exciting sounds with your sub bass. So yeah, let's jump right into this. So to start off, I've created a little project here that has some kind of examples of the bass being used. And I'm just going to have it set to the simple bass for now, but we'll go over some of these presets and we'll see what it sounds like in the grand scheme of things. But for now, this is what I was able to come up with. Heck yeah, super fun stuff. But yeah, obviously the big thing here is the sub. Let's just turn off the sidechain here real quick. And I just wanted to go over some of these presets and just show you guys what it is. It's a pretty simple preset, or simple rack, I should say. It's not really a preset, but it's a pretty simple rack, but I feel like it goes into some of the more fundamental ideas when it comes to some of these deeper styles of glitch hop and what they're doing with the sub bass, as well as some of the mid or lower mid harmonics. And yeah, I've created a bunch of little presets here that essentially do that for you, so you don't really have to kind of figure it out. And of course we've got some nice little controls here, which I'll go over here in a second. But for now, let me just show you guys what some of these sound like. Let me just make sure, yeah, there's nothing. Let me actually go maybe over to this, just this one section. So you can see the default one, if you will, is kind of just a simple harmonic, or two sets of harmonics here. And that's kind of the idea. The main focus of this is to have, you know, one, maybe two very specific harmonics that are on top of the fundamental that sort of create these chordal structures in the low mids, which tend to be somewhat tasteful. So yeah, obviously these are all very intentionally tuned, but you know, you can always go in here and open up the operator and you know, unmap some of these things or manipulate some of the mappings for the coarse frequencies, because that's essentially all that's really being truly adjusted, at least as far as timbre goes. Everything else is sort of just some I guess some simple kind of things like turning on and off oscillators or adjusting the ADSR and stuff like that. So yeah, the idea here is I just wanted to make it a little bit more accessible and fun to use, but also hopefully get you guys excited about the idea of this being a very simple process. I mean, making these kinds of subs is really, really, really simple. So yeah, let's go over some of these other presets and I'll show you how cool it can get. So this is kind of the most basic form, where you just have, you know, the classic fundamental with the mid-range, low mid kind of other frequency that's just sticking out, doing its thing. But then of course we have some other presets here. So, you know, this one again is like really accentuating that mid-range element of the sub. And you know, maybe we can turn the drums on, just so that way it's. And then I named these two Detox. These next two Detox, obviously did some referencing of some Detox unit and was just looking at what they're doing to their subs as far as the harmonics go, and I just replicated that. So. And yeah, just again, all of these are just playing off this similar idea of adding some harmonics, and not just any harmonics, but sine wave harmonics and very intentionally placed sine wave harmonics on top of your sub. So, you know, it's just a sine wave, but with some other sine waves on top, right? And that's kind of why it's so fun and cool, and why I recommend you trying out your own sort of, you know, variants of this, just because, yeah, it is really that simple. So let's go ahead and keep going down through some of these. This one's just a classic kind of sine 808. Super basic, right? And these are just like the ideas of like the deep subs. So like the reason why they're quote unquote deep is because there's not a whole lot of fullness to them. In fact, I would go so far as to say they're minimal, and that's what kind of makes them so deep, and why they work the sub so well, I guess, is just because they're really only hitting these fundamental frequencies. You know, you're only seeing these fundamentals hit at lower, you know, there's only one or two maybe fundamentals that are close to the sub frequency range, and then everything else is sort of this low mid sort of stuff that doesn't really ever reach the sub. Obviously it does, but not in a way that creates any kind of distortion or you know, a good example of this would be if I was to take the sine wave and clip it with something. Maybe I'll just grab a saturator to prove the point here. If I was to grab a saturator and lower the output, maybe put on hard clip as well, make sure this is on digital clip. So the more we clip, the more we get these harmonics or the distortion, and the more distortion we have on our basses, the less deep it will be. The more, I guess, like brainy. I think who was it that said it was a brain bass? Was it who's the person who does the Fab Filter videos? Dan Worrell. There we go. He's the one who I guess coined it as like a brain bass, I suppose. But that's kind of what it is, right? So the more saturation and distortion that you're putting onto your subs, the less it's going to feel, I guess, subby. Obviously, there's still going to be tons of sub frequency there, but it's like the more information is going to be taken away from that sine wave at the very bottom, whereas these subs are, again, designed to not really do that. And you can kind of even see, like, for a lot of these notes, there's this big kind of gap between the sub frequencies and the mids, but the mids are very strong, right? Or the low mids, I should say, are very strong when it comes to their fundamentals, or their overtones, I should say, because the fundamental is the sub, but the sub frequency, the very first frequency. But yeah, that's kind of, and these are just 808s, just because I figured sometimes having just the 808 option is nice and makes it easier to like arrange in certain ways. You know, versus it being more of a sustain boy. And yeah. And the idea here is you're basically creating this depth or deepness in the sub by, again, I'm just going to repeat it one more time, these harmonics, these very specifically placed sine wave harmonics, being usually outside of the sub range, right? Depending on what notes you're playing, of course. You know, I'm sure some of these are going to be a little bit more dangerous than others. But even on this one, you know, you can see here how you basically kind of have, you know, most sub frequencies are going to be like about 100 hertz or below. You know, technically most subs will do one up to 120 and below, but I found that, you know, often the crossovers aren't being set to that. They're being set to a little bit lower than 120, you know, sometimes like 100, I feel like is a good point. Usually even sometimes as far as like 90 or 80 hertz is where you'll start kind of feeling sub frequencies, especially on a bigger system. But the idea here is that, you know, you have this gap between those two areas. So these upper harmonics are really working those mid-range speakers, and this, you know, sub-range is really just a sine wave. You know, there's nothing special there as far as like, you know, it's not like a square wave or a square sine or anything. It's just a sine wave. And yeah, that combination is essentially how you get these deep sub sounds. So yeah, as far as all of the macro knobs here, I'll just go over these real quick. I have a little harmonic switch, so you know, if I was to maybe go over here and just kind of like just zero out everything real quick, you know, we'll have our sine wave, and this oscillator switch lets you turn on as many oscillators as you want. There's up to 4 of them, so you can have, you know, maybe just 2. And this one lets you essentially kind of manipulate the harmonics, which are all sort of mathematically related. So when you add more harmonics, it will still sound, you know, reasonable. And what's cool is this 4th and 1st harmonic are just an octave apart. So the 1st harmonic is always going to be obviously the sub note, whatever note you're playing. But once you get up to the 4th harmonic, that 4th one does not change. It's just an octave above. And yeah, on top of that, we've got a pitch envelope and a pitch length for the envelope. So we can make it a little bit more plucky, or we could do something a little bit like the opposite. I found that in the Detox tracks I was listening to, some of the times he'll do, you know, these kind of like fade ins almost, or at least it's like a pitch up, which feels a little bit different. It just feels like smoother in some ways. But of course, yeah, you can experiment with that. And then obviously the oscillator switch, we kind of went over that. And then there's ADSR, which is as classic as you can imagine. I just found that having all the ADSRs linked together made it really easy to manipulate them more easily. So this is just all of the ADSRs for all the individual oscillators. So yeah, if you want to adjust things like the sustain, maybe you want it to be more of like a plucky 808, you know, you can do that, or you can make it more of like just a sustainy 808, or you can make it just a regular bass. You can make it even fade in. You know, you can do all kinds of fun stuff, but the idea here is that it gives you a lot of control over the shape of the 808, which I think is really important, especially when it comes to context, you know, in the mix or in an arrangement. I find that having those kinds of, you know, macros are helpful. But yeah, this is a really simple rack, but I wanted to put this one out there so that way you guys can start having fun with your own deep subs, experimenting. Please go inside and make your own presets, as well as mess around with the ones that I placed here. And of course, yeah, feel free to unmap some of these and manipulate these coarse knobs manually if you so choose. Yeah, they're essentially kind of set up in a way that's really simple. But if you want to go a little bit deeper, by all means, please do. So yeah, that's all we have for today. I hope you guys enjoy this fun rack, and obviously there will be more to come. And in case you guys didn't know, since this will be the first time mentioning it in a video, there is a Discord channel now. I will put the link in the description of this video, as well as on the Patreon. It'll be around. If you can't find it, just search Discord, and I'm sure it'll pop up, but I'll try and make sure it's in this post as well. But yeah, that's it. That's all for today. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.